I've been working on commissions over the past couple of years. Um,
What does
for
that? So
various...
for people who don't know what commission means,
Yeah, that
me,
just
me
means
being
someone
one of them.
who says, "Can you make me this kind of painting?"
Oh, so someone says, "Hey, I've got 10 grand. Like, can you pay me something for that?" So
you'd need more than that.
I have £250,000.
I wish.
Interviews.
So I think I'm gonna.
So you're having
do
clean
cheers.
gin as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're drinking clean gin.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for the invite, Kerry. Yeah.
Oh, what are we thinking of that? It's refreshing.
It's very subtle.
Nice and cold. Should we put some more in, make it stronger?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is clean G, full taste, no compromise. It's a non-alcoholic gin, which I've sampled before and I absolutely loved. And what I love about it is you can drink as much as you like and there's no hangover and you're just nicely hydrated. And it's vegan, if I remember, and sugar-free or low sugar. Yeah, sugar-free, low calorie, vegan. And it is delicious. But like I said, I like it quite strong. I guess you could probably have less than that and still enjoy it. But
that's better now that you put some more in.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm gonna have another sip.
Yeah, it's great. Very light on the palate.
It really tastes like gin and tonic. That's good.
Nice.
So oh, go on. What were you
I
going to
was
say?
just about to say it's good for a day like this, a warm day. You need hydration.
You need something
hot,
cold to balance you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, if you don't know already, I guess you might by the title of the episode, because it will be titled with your name. But my guest today is Carl Randall. Round of applause. A wonderful, wonderful artist who I met back in about 2016, 17, yeah. Because I modelled for you.
Yeah.
And have now subsequently ended up in 3 or 4 of your paintings. Yeah. Which is awesome. Yeah. But you do lovely work that doesn't include me as well. We're here to talk about all of it today. And you were saying that you were painting today. So you've come straight from your studio.
Straight from the studio, yeah. I've been painting quite intensively recently.
Is it a big piece? Because you work quite large, don't you? Yeah. I've seen the canvases are massive.
Some of them are really big. The ones where I think I've done 4 paintings with you in there. They're all large. There's one of you in a supermarket, right? And there's one in a.
That's my favourite one, the one with the Malibu
and cornflakes.
Yeah, because they're things I would buy in the supermarket. There's a Glamour magazine, I think, if I remember, or Cosmo or something on the conveyor belt.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got me down to a T.
Yeah. And a nightclub and Primrose Hill and a hairdresser.
The Primrose Hill one I love. I love the whole painting. I do feel that you went in quite severely with my Widow's Peak though, just like
I'm sorry. It wasn't intentional.
You were very honest about my hairline in that one.
Yeah, I'm the one that criticised people's hairline.
But and what one were you working on today? Can you say?
I can. Yeah, it's a I've got it's just a group exhibition coming up in December, and it's just 2 small pieces. One is of Chinatown, and another one is of it's you in surrounded by it's in a courtyard with new builds around it, and it's called Girl in a Grid.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Like a figure, and then there's a grid surrounding you. So
wow.
They're just small paintings for an exhibition where all the work is quite small. So those are the pieces I'm doing at the moment. They're very small.
How small?
I mean, it's called Small is Beautiful, the exhibition. So I think the maximum size is like 20 centimeters. So the miniature paintings. So I have to put my magnifying glasses on. I've got this thing where I strap onto my head, and it kind of zooms in, and then you can get a tiny little brush, and you can get tiny little detail. It actually takes quite a long time to do a miniature painting. Probably takes longer to do a miniature painting that big than it does like a regular size, because the amount of care you have to put in it. You know? So that's what I'm doing at the moment, but I'm also starting a whole other series of paintings, some of which have you in them. It's about, so I've came out with a design so far. I've come out with about 15 London paintings and 15 Japan paintings. That's the main 2 things I do. The ones with you in them, there's one of you in like a suburban London street at night time, and there's like a house in the background with a car, very like nice house with a kind of light on. and then you just go right at the top of the canvas, and you can see this kind of UFO there. So that's like there's a good title for it. I'm not going to tell you that. And then there's another one with you with a couple of backdrops, new builds in the background with kind of wasteland around. What else have I done with you? So it'll come to me, but that's what I can remember now.
It's so funny.
Now.
So you might like work with a model, and then you might paint them for like 10 years. Do you find that you get interested in certain aspects? How do you find which person to paint? Like, how does that come to you for the scene? How do you know which model or which pose is right?
That's a good question. Well, yeah, you're right. I had a few hours with you quite a while ago, and as you know, we took lots of photographs in different poses, and that was for those 4 paintings that I've done. But then I'm starting new paintings, and I thought, well, I need some figures in these paintings, and I thought back to your photographs, and I looked at them again, and the poses suggested certain. I think it was more to do with the poses, and I guess something to do with the character of the face as well. You seem to suit. You're around the right age, and you've got a certain look about you that seem to suit these paintings that I'm doing. That are about kind of. I mean, it's really difficult to explain what paintings are about, but kind of about something to do with contemporary society. There's one of you in a supermarket as well, but different from the other one. So something to do with a slight kind of malaise about modern contemporary life, and a slight uneasiness behind them. But it's very difficult to talk about what the paintings are about. But I think it was something to do with the character of your face, plus your age and the postures you made in some of the photographs. That sort of suggested images to me, and then I just ran with it. And I don't really think about it too much. I just have an idea and then kind of run with it, really.
How do you know though? Because surely you must have billions of ideas of things that you want to paint, or ideas that feel like they could work, or like, do you generally? So I know you said you've got this exhibition in December. So for the other pieces that you're doing, are they just for joy? You've just had the idea and you want to follow it through, and then you'll find somewhere to exhibit afterwards.
Exactly. That's it.
How do you rule out which ideas aren't worth the time? Because it's such a huge commitment painting a massive canvas. Like how long does it take you to paint one of your big paintings? Like how many hours or days?
It's difficult to tell because I work on different paintings at the same time. I kind of work on them in rotation. But I think for example, a Primrose Hill painting, maybe about 5 months. And so a large canvas, like 2 meters, a lot of detail, it's probably around that, or maybe 6 months or 4 months. But in terms of ruling out ideas, I usually see an idea through you. So if I have an idea for something, I'll keep banging my head against the wall, trying to come out with a design that works. So I rarely give up on an idea for a painting. If I have an idea in my head about a painting, I think it's just about keeping at it until it starts to form close to what you want. So it's rare that I just give up on an idea and I try and see them through. Although I do give up on some ideas because they're just not working. But I hope that answered your question a bit. Yeah.
But you said you've given up on some. Have you done like half a canvas or underpainted the whole thing and then thought?
Right.
I don't know what the term is, but you know when you do your first layer that's not like skin tone, it's like blues and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten to that point and gone, actually no?
No, I'm very planned in the work. So I'll come up with a design first, either as a drawing. Sometimes, occasionally, I make a digital drawing of it as well because it's easier to move around things. If it doesn't work at that stage, I won't follow it onto a canvas because, as you said, it's a big investment. A few months on a canvas, so I need to know it works on a small scale first as a drawing. And if it doesn't work on this scale, it's not going to work on a large scale. So I know other friends who are painters. They do all the working out on the canvas, and it either works or it doesn't. And sometimes they throw the paintings away. And they've got quite a high bin rate. A lot goes in the bin. I mean, I think Francis Bacon was famous for that. He had a lot of work that just went in the bin, didn't work. And we only saw the very best work. I'm a bit more planned and a bit more structured, and I don't really work it out on the canvas. I work it out fairly thoroughly on a small scale first, and if it works on that scale, then it'll work as a painting. So I've never really, unless we're talking about when I was very young, over the past couple of decades, I've never really worked on a painting that I didn't finish.
Mm. Wow. That's, I mean, it's hard though, because how can the artist know if the idea is good, you know? Because, you know, like Francis Bacon, he said he binned a load and then only showed us the very best. But how can the artist really be objective enough to know what the very best is? Like, surely it's not really up to, it's hard to know, like, it's for the audience to decide.
I guess that's where intuition comes in, right? Because that's what I'm sure it's the same for you with your acting and things. You're really riding on your own intuition, really, about what feels right or not, and that's what will make your work, and not, you know, I could give some subject matter to you and the same subject to me to make a picture. We come up with very different, you know, interpretations of that, and that's what makes that's what will make yours look like if you were painting, I'm saying, your own painting and not mine. So I just think intuition comes into it. Does it feel right to you? Is it coming close to what you rich? I mean, it's kind of, it depends on the painting. They go down different paths. Sometimes you have a feeling. A lot of it's just a feeling, really, or a formal design that you're trying to chase. And when it starts to come close to it, then you know you're kind of succeeding in a way. Other times you're not quite sure what you're after, really. It's really difficult to kind of write down or pinpoint what you're trying to do sometimes, and so with that kind of idea where it's just a very vague feeling or idea, it starts off as one thing and then it may transform into something else. That can be more interesting than what you started with, or less interesting. So I just think it's about following, you know, why do you want to make that painting in the first place? What is it about that subject matter that interests you? And then keep pushing it in the ideas phase until it starts to resemble something like you originally intended, really. But saying that, I've never made a painting yet that looked exactly the same in my head as on the canvas. There's some mysterious gap between thinking about an image and then materializing it on a surface in shape and tone and color. They never look the same, but I think the thing is as well, you never quite get there. I think you never arrive at something you're 100% happy with, or you never really capture what you're trying to do. And if you did, maybe that wouldn't be a great thing, because you've then got nowhere else to go, really. So you're always chasing something slightly ephemeral and something that doesn't really exist. And
that feels like a universal, like, artist, whether you're a writer or an actor or whatever. I think that feeling of not quite, or but you can be pleased with it and feel you've sort of reached your objective, but then there's something then you've learnt from it and further you want to go, or something you'd like to do differently next time, or something you feel you could have done differently that time. But and there's a balance, isn't there, between indulging in that feeling but not feeling but not letting it take away from the enjoyment of what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
But I think that sounds like universal.
Yeah.
And
So
even
you
the best
do
people
writing
do
as
that.
well, don't you? Yeah. And do you find it similar with your writing?
Yeah, I don't know how anybody ever knows when a script is finished.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Because it's never finished. You know, like, there's always something that could be shifted, or especially with time as well, and then your own life experience happens and you come back to it, and then there's some other influence you want to put in, or something else that you could mine out of it that you couldn't a year ago, or whatever.
But when you start, for example, you have an idea for a script, or I mean, it's very difficult because it depends on the script, right? But what do you start with? You start with is it like a feeling, or is it like a narrative, or what's like that initial seed? I think we're talking about. Like, it's difficult to know. Sometimes it's difficult to know what you're trying to do. You just know you're interested in it.
Yeah. Or what I find is I'll have like one idea, and then several other things will start sort of coming into my life that will sort of collect around the idea, and they'll sort of like expand that idea.
Yeah.
And then it will go from just the feeling to a full idea to lots of interesting characters or whatever that has all sort of just been sort of gathering towards me over the previous few weeks or months.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the time I have images that come to my head for a script. Like, I'll see something really clear and visual, and then I want to kind of recreate that feeling through the writing.
Right.
And I think the stronger scripts are probably ones that are that go heavier on theme up front. So it's like you were saying, you want to know what a painting is doing or why you want to make it.
Yeah.
I find that really hard to hold on to sometimes through the editing process.
Oh, right. Yeah.
does that happen with painting
Yeah,
as well?
it
It's like
does,
it starts
yeah.
to get away from you,
Yeah.
and you have to really come back to what you wanted to do it for.
Yeah, I think you summed up. It sounds very similar, really. You can get very distracted during the process, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes being distracted, and as you said, things come into your life. There's that thing of if you're always thinking about some theme or idea, like you'll almost bring things related to that into your life,
Yeah.
and you'll notice these things. When you're out and about and living your life, that you'll then bring into your work, as you said, with your person. It's the same with painting, really. And sometimes having an idea and being really incredibly stubborn and seeing it through, so it becomes very similar to what you originally intended, although often you didn't exactly know what you intended, is a good thing. And other times you start with an idea and then you let the process sort of dictate how it's going to look, and it becomes a different animal. And that actually can be more interesting than what you started with. So kind of, I don't know, there seems to be the various paths that you can arrive at something, it sounds similar with writing. I'm not a writer, so I can't really say, but
But I really admire the way artists take their time. I think that I definitely feel pressured as a writer to keep writing and to keep coming up with ideas and keep generating, whereas I love the fact that you'll have like one painting or a couple of paintings, because you said you like to jump between them, and you'll know that that's like half a year, and then you're not going to immediately rush to start painting again. Do you take breaks, or do you
well, I usually work on about maybe like 6 paintings at a time in the studio, because you've got to let the oil painter dry, so you put layer on, you've got to wait a couple of weeks for it to dry, and then you work on another painting. So I never just work on one painting at the same time. I'm always doing something, really. I find what would I do during the gap? I think you always need to keep your brain like trained on whatever your craft is, really. I find anyway, to keep if you take a gap, I don't know, you kind of ends up losing, not losing confidence, but you kind of, I don't find gaps very helpful. Yeah.
You won the BP portrait, was it? No, it wasn't portrait.
Well, it's not the portrait award, it's a travel award. So it means you have a display at the portrait gallery of so there's this thing called, there used to be this thing called the BP Portrait Award. This apparently starting something else now. It's sponsored by someone else, but and then if you get into that exhibition, you can apply for this thing called the Travel Award. So you have to have an idea of where you want to go and travel to, and why, and and it has to be portrait based. And I went to Japan and made a bunch of paintings about modern Japan, and that was great. That was great. That just came right at the end of my 10 years in Japan. And it was a really good way back into London and showing my work to it has a big footfall, the portrait gallery. So that was a great opportunity.
And beautiful work as well.
Oh, thanks.
Do you ever look back at that work though, with the lens of what I was just saying, what we were just saying about never feeling or that feeling of growth, or the feeling of editing, so past work, would you ever look and think, oh, I could have changed that slightly, or there's a brushstroke I could do there which would, I don't know.
Yeah,
does that work?
I mean, sometimes, I know exactly what you mean, but not often actually, because I don't find it. I think they are what they are. You did them at a certain time of your life, and you were at a certain stage of your development. So I don't really do that, really. I mean, yeah, I'm quite thorough as well with the paintings. I kind of thoroughly work them out, and so there's I don't feel there's ever an area of the painting I did that was rushed. Even if I have a deadline, they're quite thoroughly done, so there's not that many paintings I look back and I think, well, I really messed up there.
Oh no, not messed up. It's more like the feeling of like the time difference, and the Carl now versus Carl 10 years ago. And but I love that it sounds like you, once it's done, you really commit to that and you sort of release it into the world.
Gone.
And it's gone. Yeah,
it's gone. As you know, you change as a person, don't you? So I'm sure your writing now is very different from 10 years ago, and the things you write about now are probably you probably wouldn't write about things you did 10 years ago, or would you? Do you have like ongoing repeated themes?
There are definitely themes. Are there themes in your work? Because this is something someone said to me recently. They were like, just look at all of your work and what do you notice that pops through? And,
Right.
you know, what kind of characters are your protagonists and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's a really interesting exercise because you're so close to it, you can't see.
Yeah.
Obviously, you do portraits and you're really interested in people.
Right.
But, like, what do you see that connects to your subjects or your sort of perspective on the subject?
You know, I think things like that, I feel like it's, I mean, we're doing an interview, so I have to talk about it, but kind of, I feel like number one, it's not good to explain away your paintings too much, because if I say, right, this is what my paintings are about, they're all about this, I mean, I don't know what they're about, then it kind of fixes them into something, and then it kind of stays like that, and I prefer leaving it a bit open for people to look at them and not know what they're about. But if I had to say something that other people have observed on, I don't impose it onto the paintings, but there's something about, well, on a very like formal level, it's just something about the connection between people and places and cities and narrative paintings where there's a relationship between the person and place. But there's always, and I never impose this on the paintings. They just come out like that. And I think the thing you don't intentionally do to your art, whether that's writing or whatever, I think there's something inherently you about that, because you're not trying to do it. And so this thing of like of people looking a little bit isolated or slightly separate from each other, like they're slightly occupying, like we're occupying the same space here, but psychologically we're in slightly different worlds. And there's something about that I don't try to do, that just comes through in the paintings. You know, I'm really interested in things that are very different from myself, or feel very different from myself. Maybe that's why I went to the other side of the world for 10 years. It's not related to me at all. So I see, this is how I see myself anyway, whether my work's like this or not. You know, I really don't see myself as an autobiographical artist looking at my own stuff, really. I mean, you can't help it, it will come through. But I have a friend who paints a lot of self-portraits, and his work he's very interested in his own life and background and his own psychology. I don't feel like that's enough to occupy myself. I feel like painting's inward enough. It's quite introspective. If I only focus on I think I would just disappear into myself, and I don't think it's, for me anyway, it's not a key to happiness. So I really like painting things that have got seemingly like nothing to do with me. For example, Japan for 10 years, absolutely nothing to do with me. I like that kind of outward facing thing, really.
Going right back to the beginning, like how did you find that style? You've got such a distinctive style. Did it take you a long time to explore, and did you go down any paths that now you look at and feel they were other people's work that you were trying to impose on your own? Or
right, it's a good question. That it's quite a long. I think it would be quite a long answer, really. I'll try and bullet point it, but I think, well, before, I think I have to talk about a different. So pre-Japan. So this is around so I did a lot of buildings when I was at university. I went to UCL, and I did a lot of paintings of buildings at night, slightly influenced by Edward Hopper. And then when I graduated, you know, like perhaps a lot of art students, when they graduate, you have a little bit of a crisis in terms of, well, what am I going to do now? Do I really want to keep doing this work for the rest of my life? And what I find out I was really interested in was sitting down with people and sketching them, and just sitting like this and drawing people's friends' faces and things. So I did that for a few years, and then I went to this place called the Royal Drawing School, and that's a 1-year intensive drawing study. So I became very good at drawing people, and what I was really interested in the whole time was combining the places and the people. But up until that point, they were always very separate, the buildings and the people. Then I got an opportunity to go to Tokyo, and so it's such an amazing visual city, Tokyo. Then it was a real opportunity to combine the portraiture with the city, and so then I started combining people and places and constructing these narrative images, which hadn't really happened before. It was either a portrait or a place, And then I think style, it's for me anyway, the way, if you're talking about this style that you think I have, I think it develops without you really knowing about it. Or the more you paint, I think the more you work, in my experience anyway, the more something will start to happen without you really trying it. Really, I mean, there are certain things you kind of you force onto it. Like I do around that time where I was combining people and places. I did force a flattened perspective on things, like flattening the space. That's not my idea. That goes all the way back to medieval painting. So that's something formally I did force onto it. And I did.
Why? Why did you do that?
Well,
do you know?
Well, I think for me anyway, there's not that many painters that are interested in absolute realism and depicting the world exactly in inverted commas how you see it. And if you were to look at this room now and paint it absolutely exactly as you see it, in incredibly fine detail, it would probably come out something like a photograph. I mean, that's a very crude way of putting it, but there's not that many paintings that are interested in that. Really, I'm not. So what you're really trying to do with your work, I'm sure it's the same with writing. You're trying to almost create like a parallel world that lives alongside the real world, but it's a slight distortion of the real world, really. So by flattening, just to go back this idea of not making everything very real, if you were to make space very real and scale very real and light, you'd end up with something too real, and that's not very interesting to me. So by flattening space, you're kind of pushing it away from reality, because you look at this room and it goes in traditional linear perspective, but if you flatten it, number one, it brings it one step away from reality and makes it look a little bit odd. And sometimes I make things too big or too small, and that also makes things look a little bit odd. So the kind of images I'm interested in making, or was back then, were when you look at them, they look kind of like real scenes, but there's something a little bit off about them. The space is wrong, the scale is wrong, but not in such an obvious way that it kind of hits you over the head when you first look at it. So it's just this idea of kind of interpreting the world through a slightly kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't use the word distorted, because it's not like I deliberately want a kind of really distorted view of the world, but something like that, Kerry. And also, if you flatten things, it places emphasis on pattern as well. I'm very interested in pattern making. If you look at my paintings, a lot of them are just patterns against patterns. Even like loads of heads. I don't make the face in the foreground bigger than the one in the background. I'll keep them the same size, and that kind of turns the pattern, the crowd, into a pattern. And then there's like a field of grass or something. I'll turn that into a flat pattern. It's almost like textiles against each other, and kind of respecting the flatness of the surface of the picture. That goes all the way back to Cubism, really. This idea of not trying to create real space, and flattening things and respecting the flatness of the surface. So I hope that answered your question.
That's fascinating. But you were telling me something else when I interrupted and asked why you turned to why you reduced that space.
Right.
You were telling me sort of how you found your style. You're on a timeline.
Right. Okay.
So you got to the point where you sort of you found that part of your style, which is that's a huge part of what you do.
Right.
And that means your work is really recognizable as yours. So then
thanks.
Once you did that, what was the next part? So you put your people and your places together.
Yeah, people and places together, flattening things for the reasons I just said. Changing scale a little bit, just to mess with the eye a bit. So you look at things and it kind of messes with your eye a little bit, rather than everything being really explained and given. I mean, I would like to do it more. I'd like to explore it even more, but I haven't got there yet. And I was just working incredibly hard at the time. I mean, and I think if you just keep making pictures one after the other, just something starts to happen where you find your own language, really. I don't think you can sit down, like Rodin's thinker like that, and just come up with a style. I don't think it works like that. I think it happens in the doing. I don't know if you find that with your writing, but you can't work it out on your head. You need to do it, and then a language starts to develop. So in terms of like developing a style, I think it just happened naturally, Kerry, and I didn't I don't feel as though I imposed it that much, really. It just, and I think it's ever evolving as well. Some of the paintings I'm making at the moment, some of which have you in it, some of them are returning to a slightly more realistic interpretation of space, and others are kind of distorted again.
Because previously, you painted Joe Brand, didn't you? That was part of a series. What was that for again?
So that was this. So I had just got back from Japan. I thought, right, the Japan stuff's finished. What am I going to do now? I'm back in London, and this interest in people and places was still there. So I was going to, get friends to model for me and put them in London scenes or people that I met. And I thought, well, maybe interesting writing of people whose work I like. And I actually already knew Jo Brown by that point because I had written to her like in early 2000s, and I met her, so I already knew her. So I contacted her again, and I wrote to about 100 people whose work I like. Very, very wide variety of people. Some of them were actors, some of them were artists, some of them were, a very wide breadth of people, and 15 people said yes. So then when I'm part of the project, I asked them, could you choose a place in London for the background? Because I'm not just painting your face, I combine people and places, and then they chose a place in London that has some sort of significance for them.
It must have taken a long time to paint all of these people and places. How long did that project take?
Not that long, a couple of years maybe.
I love that. Not that long, a couple of years.
Well, I was working on other stuff. It's not like I wake up in the morning. I was only working on it for the whole 2 years. So that was interesting.
And what happened to those portraits?
They were bought by a collector. They were, all 15 of them were bought by a collector. And I mean, just one collector? Yeah, just one guy. I wanted to sell them as a set, really, keep them together rather than them being dispersed, because they were designed as a set, really, to be seen together. So he one guy. I'm in the fortunate position, really, of not really owning any of my own work. If you came to my studio, you wouldn't see anything other than the stuff I'm working on right now. So it's very fortunate, that I have people that keep buying my work. Yeah, hopefully it'll continue.
And are there any other people, you said you contacted all those people and you got 15 back, and there's some people on that list that you'd still like to hear from? Yeah. Who's at the top of that list?
Oh, I'd really love to do movie directors, actually. If I wasn't in painting, I'd love to, I don't know, I'd probably be rubbish at it, really, but a lot of painters, they start off as artists and become movie directors. Tim Burton, Ridley Scott, Terry Gilliam, David Lynch. So I've got this image of
the opening tonic, sorry.
Very subtle. Of a parallel life where I was making movies rather than painting. So it'd probably be movie directors. I would love to have painted Ridley Scott. I'm a big fan of his movies, and Terry Gilliam. So I think I wrote to them. I got a reply from Ridley Scott's secretary saying he's busy with some so-and-so movie.
How long would they have to sit for?
Well, those, because they're busy, I made the majority of the portrait from photographs, and then I finished them in life. I met them at the end and just polished off from life.
Yeah. So it's not too much time for them. Because who was it? Wasn't it Tim Burton who lives in Hampstead?
Oh, does he still live there?
He definitely did. I used to see him walking around quite a lot.
Oh, really?
Was it Tim Burton who was married to Helena Bonham Carter? Yeah, it was Tim Burton. Yeah, he lived in Hampstead.
Did you see him?
Yeah, he lives in his Swiss cottage.
Did you say hello?
No, but we were at drama school and we'd always just see him and Helena Bonham Carter just walking across the road. We're like, oh my God, let's cross, let's quick. And we walk behind them. Oh my God, it's Tim Burton. Who's going to say hello? Who's going to say hello? Nobody would. But I bet he's still there. Just go have a little walk around.
Just loiter around there.
Seriously, just go hang out by the Hampstead Theatre. Just... on a day
give
off.
me his address.
Do a bit of painting on the street. He'll come over. Oh, what are you painting? Well, that's funny you should ask.
What a great idea.
Lure him in.
That's a great idea.
Get him to come to you.
I think you've nailed it. I'm going to do that. With every movie director, I'm just going to camp outside their house and do the street paintings like that guy from Mary Poppins.
Yeah, Dick Van Dyke.
For me, anyway, one craft is... You can spend your whole life painting and not really scratch the surface, really. So I'm not really. I don't think I'm really one of these people that just disperses my energy over this and this and that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you really want to try out different stuff that you've never done? Or are you quite disciplined, or you know, are you very much like focused on one path in terms of writing and
No,
acting?
I don't think so. No,
But
I
you
like
do
to do
this
lots of
as well.
different things. It's a bit
Yeah.
like how you like to paint several paintings at once. I feel that
Right.
way with my projects. So I like to go off and act in something and get that experience like in front of an audience and feel that. And then
Right.
I like to balance that out by spending time just immersing into a world that I'm writing. And then like I had an idea for this, and like, you know, I wanted to try that and, you know, sit with people and do this. So I quite like challenging myself and doing new things, but there are limits. So I know what I'm good at now, and I know the things that I'm not so good at, and I'm going to focus on the things that are my strengths. And I think you learn that, like, I spent my 20s doing anything, and now it's time to, you know, it's nice to be clear about what I'm good at, I think.
And I mean, I know you do various things, but was acting your main thing throughout your 20s as well? Is that something that you've always wanted to do?
Yeah. That's the
So
that was the main first thing. Well, mainly, you know what, as well, nobody ever really told me I could be a writer. So that didn't happen until a few years ago. I had been writing my whole life without realizing I was a writer. I had notebooks and ideas, I had outlines, I had entered competitions and placed, you know, I had done a lot. But I didn't really know how to take it that one step further. And then I worked with somebody, and he read one of my scripts, and he was like, "That's really good." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And he's like, "Really experienced director." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to enter it to some competitions and stuff." And he said, "No, like, you could actually try and get an agent. You know, you could pitch this to a production company." And nobody had really said that to me. And it wasn't that I needed the validation. It was more just like, I grew up on a council estate where people didn't really go off to be screenwriters. And I used to write scripts in my bedroom for like Smallville and Buffy. And I just didn't really think it could be a job. So it just didn't occur to me at all. And then I approached agents, and I've got an agent, and, you know, pitching stuff, and then, you know, moved to the next level. Like, oh wow, I've always been a writer. So yeah, it's been a process, sort of working out what I do.
You have a theatre company, do you, like Purple Ostrich?
Yeah, thanks for dropping the name. Yeah, producing this very podcast.
Oh, okay. Right.
Purple Ostrich Productions.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and it's me and someone I trained with. We set that up after drama school. So we've done a few shows. We've done some Shakespeare. We did a lot of comedy.
Right.
And now I think we're going to take a show up to Edinburgh next year.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so it's more... I've been trying to... Part of doing the podcast as well, and I said this in another episode, was like, I got to the point a little bit where I was like, what am I doing? You know, it's like, what I think is great, although you said you're very lucky people buy your work, I get the feeling that if people didn't buy your paintings just for a little while, you wouldn't stop painting, and you wouldn't question the validity of your art.
No.
Whereas I think as an actor especially, you're really waiting for someone to pick you and to give you the job.
Oh, right.
And you can't really work on your craft unless someone gives you the space to, or unless you make it your own space.
Yeah.
So partly why I write and why I started writing was to write myself parts that I could experiment with. And I wrote lots of comedy shows that we toured to give us the space to do what we want to do, because we had to wait for permission. And that's the harder thing. And that's what I really admire about people like you, who that part's not really part of your job at all. It's just like, this is what you do, and you make what you want to make, and at some point people will buy that work.
Yeah, hopefully.
Whereas, you know, you can't really act like a, you know, Shakespeare monologue in your bedroom.
That
you know,
must
you
be
don't get
hard.
the same feedback that you need working in an ensemble, you know, with an audience, and
that must be hard.
that kind of stuff.
Like waiting for other people to give you opportunities. I mean, it is. It is the same with painting, like in terms of someone offering you a solo show or something. But you're right. I mean, I think that one of the great things about being a painter is that you're really in control of everything. Really, you're creating your own world, and I guess one of the things maybe I'd struggle with if I wasn't making movies, this idea of like compromising, and because there's no compromise with the painting. You're just doing whatever you do, and that's one of the strengths of it, and it's a great thing to do if you're interested in it.
You have total control over what you're making, and it's like people buy it because they like what you have made.
But if it's a commission, slightly different. They may say certain things like, you know,
Could you make me look younger?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Could I be more beautiful?
Well, yeah, you do get those comments, which is fair enough if they're paying.
Really?
Yeah, if for a portrait, but you've got to kind of stick to your guns a little bit because as I'm sure you know, with working with people, they can sometimes people don't always know what they want anyway, and they can weaken a picture by having too much interference.
Definitely.
And the best people are just people just let you get on with it, really.
And trust you because they've commissioned you for a reason.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, my brothers are both artists.
Oh, really?
They work as animators and illustrators and in 3D, sort of
nice.
the 3D world.
Yeah.
But they say that a lot, you know, sometimes they get notes and it's like, you know, this is now you're just kind of giving a note because you want to give a note and actually this is not going to look better with your note.
Right.
And but yeah, it's a hard balance, I guess, when you're working with a client or you're balancing that commission.
So did you say before you grew up with you don't have any sisters? It was all male.
Two brothers,
oh,
yeah.
Really? Wow.
Two brothers. Mum died when I was young, so it was my dad, two brothers, and a male cousin who was like a brother.
Right.
So it was very like.
So were you
a little boy?
I was going to say that, not the stereotype, but were you a little bit of a tomboy type?
Yeah, definitely. What about you? Do you have siblings?
I have a younger sister and an older brother. I'm in the middle.
A middle child.
Middle child, yeah.
Are they artists?
My sister does performance. She's got like a band, like a 1940s, like kind of cover versions of 40s music.
Oh, that's cool.
And she does gigs and things, and my brother's not related to anything artistic now. So we didn't really grow up in an artistic household, really.
I think that's funny though, because my parents were not. My dad was a builder, and my mum was a housewife. I think she played the accordion when she was young, but I never saw her play it.
Right.
I've got some family members who, like way back when, who painted, but but no, me and my brothers, we didn't really follow any footsteps with anyone that we saw. Yeah. So what did your parents do?
Nothing to do with my dad. Like yourself, I'm from a council estate. My dad was a train driver. My mum was a housewife. So I think we were kind of fortunate of that generation where, you know, you could go off and do your own thing. I feel like with my parents' generation, it was a little bit, or maybe I'm just mythologizing about previous generation where there was less opportunities maybe in terms of education. You couldn't really go off and do your own thing or follow your own path, really. And
so your dad was a train driver. When did you start painting? When did you decide that you were interested in
always that? Really, you know. Well, in terms of painting, like on the canvas, it wasn't until I was like 15 or something. But before that, I was always drawing. I really wanted to be a cartoonist, like kind of Disney. I used to really be into remember Garfield? Remember the cats? I used to draw like obsessively. I think the way every day in the newspaper, and I used to cut them out and copy them. And that's where you learn to draw, really, like the line, you know. So it was from that, really. And then when I got to around 16, I was introduced to fine art and painters at A levels, and that seemed interesting. So I went off in a slightly different trajectory. But you know, it's funny in life, if you just a slight nudge here and there, I could have went into. I think you can see it in my work as well. Really, I'm not really a painter in the sort of Frank Auerbach sense, where you know, thick paint and big brush marks. You can see there's a sort of graphic sensibility in my work where I almost when you're 18, you've got to choose what you want to do for the rest of your life. I almost went into graphic design or animation, and I think you can see it in the work. There's a sort of graphic sensibility and a kind of illustrative quality to them, which I don't try to hide. It's kind of it's the way I paint, and I've tried the whole thick paint thing, but it's not really doesn't really suit me. It's not really something that interests me. So yeah, you can see that background in my work, really, of kind of illustration, graphics, animation. I think a little bit combined with, you know, painting influences, for example, early Flemish painting, or there's a period in between the two world wars in Germany called New Objectivity. Have you heard of it?
No.
People like Otto Dix. You know Otto Dix?
Mm-mm.
Amazing group of painters, and also early 20th century British and American painters like Stanley Spencer and Edward Hopper, Andrew Wyeth, that kind of thing. Yeah.
What did your parents think when you said, "I'm going to be a painter"?
I don't think I ever said.
You didn't have to sit them down.
But I feel like that attitude was, as long as, you know, the kids find something they're interested in, just let them do it. As long as they work hard at it. I think working hard was a really important thing, and taking it seriously, I think, was something they were more concerned about rather than what it actually is. And I feel like for them, because I feel like they had such few opportunities in the Northeast, you know, during when they were with my age, that in the 60s and 70s. I feel like it was kind of almost slightly the only way is up kind of attitude, as long as they work hard and focus on what they want to do. So they weren't opposed. My mother was very encouraging. I think my dad, he certainly wasn't against it. I think as dads do, they worry a bit and kind of, I think he suggested a couple of times, maybe, have you thought about being an architect and things, you know, trying to kind of push me in that direction. But he wasn't against it. Just, I think parents worried, aren't they, about their kids and what they're going to do. But it worked out fine, you know. Yeah.
My dad did that. He used to say, "Why don't you be a teacher? You could be a teacher." And then at one point, I ended up lecturing back where I had done my undergrad on the drama course there, and he was so proud.
Was he?
Yeah, he was so excited. I was back for like a module as an hourly paid lecturer.
Yeah.
He was like, "You've made it."
Yeah, that's probably the highlight of your career. As far
Yeah,
as
I think for him.
Yeah.
But it's true. I think what you're saying about that generation not having the choice. That they just had to survive post-war. My dad was born in 48, my mum was born in 51, so
right.
yeah,
right.
like hard times.
Mine, yeah.
They were born over in Ireland where there was just nothing, and then moved over here in the 60s and 70s, right. where there was still nothing. You know, like my granddad would work on the buildings in central London. My dad helped as a teenager. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was just like they had to just survive. Just survive. Yeah. Then you have a kid who's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be an actor." Yeah. It's like, what does that mean?
I know. Well, it happens like that, doesn't it? With generations, like it kind of, you know, I don't know. I hope the generations will keep having more opportunities, but I don't know. These days, things seem to start with the economy and things.
Feels like we're going way back. Yeah, we've gone way back. I saw something the other day. Someone said there was a poll done which said that lots of people think that national service should come back in the UK.
What do you think about that?
Absolutely no fucking way. No way. No. Like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. And the most people who voted on the poll were over 60. So there are people who've never had to do any of that.
I think I saw that, yeah.
It's like, ridiculous. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
But I do think social media also plays such a huge part in us thinking that we're in the worst times or we've slid back, you know.
Yeah, hopefully we're not. But, you know,
I don't think we are. There's a lot going on, but I think that we're also very lucky. We got loads more than previous generations had in so many ways. Yeah. For instance, I could do this very podcast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because of technology, you couldn't do this in the 80s. God.
Yeah, imagine our parents doing this.
I wish that my dad had done something like this so that I could watch it now. You know, like and see that kind of archival footage of that young person and the kind of man he was.
Did you ever interview him?
A couple of times. Yeah, I did do a couple of interviews when we knew he was sick, but. I actually just watched one back for the first time a couple of days ago because this play for Edinburgh next year is sort of about him and grief and really uplifting. So I watched this footage and it was quite hard to watch because I was annoyed with myself.
Why?
Because I felt like in the moment I was so focused on recording the conversation that I wasn't just in it with him at times. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there were a few things he started to say or that he...
Was it cancer, was it?
No, he had this really rare disease called PSP, progressive supranuclear palsy. So it's related to Parkinson's, and it's like a more severe form that basically once you have symptoms within 5 to 8 years, you won't be alive anymore. It's and there's no medicine for it, and it's just incredibly rare. So for the first year, he was just falling over a lot, but then eventually. You lose the power to speak and you lose the power to walk and to eat and eventually you're kind of just bedridden. So it was a really long sort of protracted illness and you're sort of grieving the whole time but then not at the same time. You know, you're just living in this sort of state of this held state of grief. Yeah. And also with the illness it would get sort of progressively worse and then you look back at the previous stage and just think, God, you know, that he looked healthy, you know. And we were back then going, oh my God, is he dying? But it was like, actually, he was just, you know, sat up in a wheelchair, talking a bit slowly. Yeah. But it was really, really horrible way to die. Oh my God.
That sounds awful. Yeah.
What happened to your dad?
Not that dissimilar. It was cancer, and that lasted about 2.5 years from the first diagnosis till him dying, and it was just a gradual. there was a period where it felt like he was getting better actually, but it was kind of deceptive, and it was just 2.5 years of anxiety and him gradually getting worse, and my mum looking after him as well was a real full-time carer, and it was just tough. I think. I mean, I don't think you really appreciate it until one of your parents get ill, do you? How kind of affects the dynamic of the family and your own outlook as well, you know.
How have you found it affected your outlook?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to say. I think it's probably quite cliched things of it kind of emphasizes how temporary everything is, and yeah, probably something like that. I haven't really analysed it really. Yeah.
No, I mean, and you can't when you're in the grief as well. It just happens, right? But I definitely had the feeling of like, some problems aren't problems. That's something that when I'm with people and they're moaning about non-problems, and I'm just like, this is not. You've been through so much harrowing stuff, and you know, you've seen somebody live those last days of their life and stuff, and it just feels like, oh my god, the fact that person went in front of you in the line at Tesco is really not warranting like a 2-hour discussion. It is a non-problem.
That's true.
So that sort of stuff went to one side, and then definitely I had the feeling of like, if you want to do something, just go do it.
Right.
Like, just
you
that I was like, and I know that also in the sort of weeks and months after he died, I felt this compulsion to be around people. Like, I just loved connecting with people and being with people. I think that was, so just realizing that was something that helped, just felt positive. But and I think you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah. It's nice when people ask though. I really like when people say and I got this. I remember this thing after it happened when I'd meet people and they just wouldn't ask about it. It's completely understandable because prior to this, once I heard someone, I wouldn't. It's just easier not to ask, and you make them feel uncomfortable or you. I just made them feel really annoyed that I just wouldn't ask. Like, it just didn't seem like they care, but it's perfectly understandable. I did the same thing, but now I think I would make the point actually of just asking, because I think it's helpful to ask. You know, how do you feel? How's it going?
Or just to ask questions about the person. Like, sometimes I know before my dad died, I would have the same with my mum. So like, people wouldn't want to ask how old I was or how she died, or anything about her. So then it feels like that person is almost erased because you're not talking about them. And actually, also, I would feel like I don't want to take the space up and just bring her up and talk about her. And I feel the same way about my dad. Like, although I do sort of actively, I talk about him a lot because I just feel like he's still around me because it's only just a year and a half ago happened. But like, it feels nice when someone asks you, you're like, oh,
I think so.
I'll tell you where he grew up or what job he did. And I guess people are just so scared to see the grief, maybe, or but I guess it's also trusting if you ask that somebody can go, actually, I don't want to talk about them today. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, it's understandable why people wouldn't ask really, and I used to do the same thing really. But I feel like it's like an ongoing. I thought before it happened, it would someone died and then. I don't know, then you would move on or something. It's just an ongoing process, I think. It's just always with you. Yeah. It's never, I don't think it ever, it just becomes part of you, the fact that someone died. It's it's now part of who you are. And I think it'll just be ongoing. It's just in your heart. Really. Yeah. So that's something I didn't expect really.
I saw an interesting image about that. It was like a jar, and it had a ball in it, and the ball took up the whole jar, and it said, and then there was another picture with the ball, the same size ball, but the jar was bigger, and then another picture, the same size ball, but the jar was bigger, and they were like, that's grief, you know, you kind of grow around it, and your life expands, and you have new memories and decades that come after. Yeah. But the pain or the feeling is still the same.
Yeah. But I guess your mum died when you were young, right? Yeah. So, in some senses, I mean, my mum's still alive. Were you already kind of prepared for it in a way?
No, not at all. It was worse. No. Well, I mean, it's not a competition, better or worse in first place or whatever. But like, it was terrifying going through that again because it's the same group of people and in the similar locations, similar sort of dynamics. Suddenly, you're in the hospital rooms again. Everybody, the same cousins are visiting, the same aunts and uncles. You know, like the same church for the funeral, the same kind of, cast. It was just like really weird in that
Right.
way. And the way my mum died was quite horrific. So she had cancer,
Right.
but her final moments were very painful for her, and I saw them. So the whole way through, I was just very scared for my dad. I didn't want him to be in as much pain as she was,
Right.
and he wasn't at all.
He wasn't,
It
right.
was lovely. It was a lovely death, you know,
Right.
as good a death as you could wish for.
Yeah.
With lots of people around him that loved him, and
Right.
just, you know, just love in the room and
Yeah.
connection in that moment, and
Yeah.
a real like supported kind of going.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, it didn't make it any easier at all.
No. Right.
Or harder. It just is.
Right.
I think it just
Okay.
is. It does feel weird though, being, you know, just me and my brothers now with no parents. It feels very weird to be like an adult orphan. There's this sense of like this lack of mooring or history. You know, they were our connection to Ireland as well. You know, and it feels like some sort of heritage and connection is gone with that as well. That's been a weird process.
Yeah.
Just feeling very like alone in that respect. And the bells are tolling quite dramatically now.
Yeah, that was good.
Who is the bell tolling for now? But yeah, it's just all of it's a bit of a shit show, really. You can't really dress it up. I don't think it's easy for anyone, and never has been. But I think talking about it definitely.
I think it helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it helps.
I think it definitely does.
So, it's obviously understandable, you know, if someone says I can't do this, because for example, I can't play any musical instruments, and it would be pretty cool to do that, but I feel like that was a block for me. If I wanted, for example, to write a piece of music, I'd feel like the fact that I don't know how to do it would be a block. But I'm sure that if I just researched it a bit, not for years, just researched a bit and got the basics there again, I'm sure I could piece of music that does something for me. Because you're really trying to do something for yourself. Really, you're trying to make a picture primarily that you find interesting. And if you do that, and you genuinely you engage with it, someone else somewhere will find it interesting.
Yeah.
And if you're not engaged with what you're doing, or you're only half interested in the pictures you're making, then why should anyone else be interested? And you can sometimes tell when someone's only half engaged with what they're doing. So I'd say to those people that just do it anyway, you know, and the technical thing will come if that's what you want. But it's not all about technique, and it's the same with any field, I think, really, you know. Just get on with it, I think, really.
That's what, and I love that, because that's kind of that pleasing, trying to work out what you want to make and put that out there, rather than preempting what an audience wants and going with the impulse to make.
Yeah.
That goes across all sort of artistic
it does.
mediums.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good having a bit of a commercial sense. I mean, I do make pictures as well, kind of in the back of my mind, hope that they will sell, you know, and they do. But
you're pleasing yourself. You said please yourself
primarily
first.
make it for yourself because you want to make it. And in a sense, what if this was the last painting you ever make? What would you want to do? What would that painting be? I mean, you can't always be that sort of kind of black and white about things. But what is it you want to make? Just paint it. And if you're really interested in it, someone else will be. You know. That's it, really. But I'm sure it's the same for writing. You know, if someone hasn't written before, well, so what? Just start writing, see where it takes you. And if you're getting something out of it, that's the main thing, really. You know, I think it's I don't think it's a good route trying to guess what the audience wants, really, because imagine you molded a script or a painting around the idea that you think someone else would be interested in it when you're not really. And then the outcome was they're not interested.
No one's interested.
Yeah, they're not interested. You're not. What's the point of the point of the piece? So if everything else fails, you know, at least you've got a picture that you wanted to bring into the world. Really, you know, that's that. In an ideal world, that's how it should work. And let's say you're making a painting and it never sold. No one wanted it. No one wanted to exhibit it. Got rejected from all competitions. Would you still want to hang it on your wall? I think that's a good rule of thumb, you know. If you're forcing me to answer, I think the main inspiration would be the fact that, you know, we're talking about our fathers dying recently. You're going to be there one day. You're going to be lying. You're going to be ill. You're going to be unless you get knocked over by a bus when you walk out here, you're going to be ill on your deathbed. Have you done what you think you wanted to do in your life? Have you seen that through? Have you not given up on? And it sounds all cliche, doesn't it? But have you not given up on your dreams? Have you managed to do something? Have you managed to make something out of it? And I think that's I think that's kind of an inspiration in a way, because I think it's so easy in life just to get distracted with so many different things. It's not easy, is it? There's so many different stuff coming at you in life to kind of stay focused on something you're interested in. So I think that thought of related to what we were talking about earlier of you're not going to be here forever, and are you still doing what you want to do? You know, it's probably how I'd answer that. I can't really answer that with a person, really.
No, and that's absolutely fine. I love that. That's again very, very inspiring, and I'm just really grateful that you came on here and you've given me your time and given me this lovely book. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, me too.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Virgin Interviews.